In basketball, a center is usually the tallest player on the court who collects rebounds and dominates the basket. There have been many great centers in the NBA, so here we'll cover 25 of the best. At number 25 is Chris Bosh. Bosh is followed by Walt Bellamy, Spencer Haywood, and the great shot blocker Dikembe Mutombo. Alonzo Mourning was a great defender on the Heat, Bob Lanier was a great scorer on the Pistons, and Nate Thurmond became the first ever player to record a quadruple-double. At number 18 is Bill Walton. The only reason Walton is this low on the list is because of his multiple injuries and unhealthiness over his career. In the few years he did play, Walton won an MVP and 2 NBA titles. These next two centers were both champions in the Celtics. First is Robert Parrish, who was a pivotal part in the Celtics' 80s dynasty with Larry Bird. Dave Cowens helped in an earlier dynasty with Bill Russell, also winning league MVP. And another league MVP was Willis Reed. Willis Reed is considered by many as the greatest Knick in franchise history. Despite being a bit short for a center, Reed used his talent to shot block and rebound on a nightly basis. He is most known for limping onto the court in Game 7 of the 1970 Finals, helping them win it all. Next up is Dwight Howard. Howard might have been one of the best big men of the 2000s, but his poor attitude and postseason failure puts him at 14. Howard was one of the greatest defenders at his position, known for his sky-high rebounds and shot-blocking skills. This gave him 3 Defensive Player of the Year awards. In the 70s, the 6'7" center Wes Unseld won a title on the Bullets. In the 80s, Artis Gilmore became a deadly scorer with accurate shooting. Now, currently in the NBA, one of the most talented centers is the Serbian Nikola Jokic. Nikola Jokic can't quite crack the top 10 because of the fact that he hasn't won a title yet, but he has still won many more awards worth mentioning. In today's highly competitive race for the MVP award, Jokic didn't only win it once, but twice, in a row. The efficient scorer will only get better in the prime of his career. We're now in the top 10, and the great Bob McAdoo will take the next spot. The big man was known as a lethal scorer who averaged 34 points in one season. And McAdoo wasn't just a typical center who posted up defenders and scored in the paint. He would also shoot mid-range shots and make most of them during his time on the Braves and Lakers. Number 9 is the legendary George Mikan. George Mikan was really the first big man to dominate the early NBA. In the 50s, Mikan would score over 10,000 points and win 5 championships in the first ever basketball dynasty. Next up is Patrick Ewing. Ewing would become the first NBA player drafted under the NBA lottery system, and he would land into the New York Knicks lineup. Although Ewing never won a title in the 90s because of his tough competition, he would nevertheless dominate the league with his size and strength. But one center who did win a title was David Robinson. David Robinson was a great all-around player in the 90s, but he never actually won an NBA title until Tim Duncan joined his team. David Robinson was the only graduate of the Naval Academy to be drafted first overall. On the San Antonio Spurs, he would prove to be a freakishly good athlete on offense and defense, which helped Robin win an MVP award.
47th block of the year. Jordan has a block by Robinson, the NBA's best. Steal. He's got Anderson all the way. What a move by David Robinson.
One of the more underrated players in NBA history is Moses Malone. During the 80s, Larry Bird and Magic got most of the spotlight, but Moses Malone was still a fairly versatile player. On the Sixers, Malone especially dominated the offensive board, recording the 5th most rebounds in NBA history. His longevity also led him to over 27,000 career points. But the 3-time MVP's biggest achievement might be his sole championship run. The ending resulted in the Sixers sweeping almost all of their opponents and Malone winning Finals MVP. We're now in the top 5, and next up is Hakeem the Dream Olajuwon. Olajuwon was one of the greatest all-around players from the 80s to 90s. On offense, Hakeem was a great low-post scorer and rebounder on the Houston Rockets, averaging a career double-double in those stats. But on defense, Hakeem was just as impressive, ranking top 10 all-time in blocks and steals. Most notably, he's the all-time leader in block shots at 3,830. Hakeem Olajuwon went on to win 1 MVP, 2 Defensive Player of the Year, and best of all, 2 NBA titles.
Done a pretty good job against Houston. Olajuwon goes high for the slam.
Boy, my goodness, where did he come from?
Next up is the Lakers legend Shaquille O'Neal. During his prime, Shaq was one of the most dominant centers of all time. Despite playing in a talented era, opposing teams always struggled to find ways to guard Shaq. In fact, the only way teams could really guard him was by sending him to the free throw line. Shaq first started his career on the Magic and brought them to an NBA Finals. Seeking better teams, he was traded to the LA Lakers, where he would find a lot of success with Kobe. The center ended his career with 4 titles and 3 MVPs as one of the physically strongest players in league history.
And stops, and he brought it down! He brought the whole goal down!
Goodness.
He brought the whole thing down!
Oh, it broke off right on the fence there, on the hinge there.
Number 3 is Bill Russell, the center of the most titles in NBA history. Although the 11 titles came from an era where competition was lacking, Bill Russell was still the leading figure in the dynasty. Think of it this way, Russell played 13 seasons in the league and only missed the NBA Finals once. That's the impact he made on the league in the 1960s. He also won 5 MVP awards and is now in the NBA Hall of Fame. Another center who played in the same era was Wilt Chamberlain. Chamberlain was basically Russell, but an amplified version. Because Wilt was one of the tallest and strongest players at his time, he would put up insane numbers in the regular season. These numbers include a career average of 30 points per game, 50 points in one season, and in one game alone, 100 points, a milestone no one will ever beat. On top of that, Chamberlain was a monster rebounder who got most of them from camping under the rim. The 4-time MVP was one of the most incredible players during his era, but the only thing Chamberlain lacked was playoff success. He only won 2 titles in the Sixers and Lakers. But despite Chamberlain's numbers, he still doesn't compare to the best center in NBA history, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Kareem might be known for his skyhook more than his actual play. The skyhook was his signature move, which was practically unblockable. He used this shot to win many games.
Ford sends it to Kareem. Skyhook up and good. Lakers win. Score it. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar has given the Los Angeles Lakers.
But Captain Skyhook scored in many other ways near the rim, which is mostly why he held an incredible 38,387 career points. His scoring record remained unbeaten for 38 years until LeBron broke it in 2023. In his long years in the league, Kareem won 6 MVPs and 6 championships on the Bucks and Lakers.